Hey, everybody. Welcome to Lando Lakers Live. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky coming to you Sunday night, Andy. And after a 10-year
October 11th, 2020, a date that will be remembered forever.
Forever. The Lakers 106-93 in a game that, as they say, was not that close. They win Game 6 of the NBA Finals tonight. 4-2, the series final over Miami. The Lakers are again NBA champions. There are people celebrating outside Staples Center. There are people shooting fireworks off in my neighborhood and neighborhoods throughout the city. There is a lot going on out there. People are very excited. And I haven't read the columns yet, but I've seen Molly Knight tweet about it and other people. And, this is a night that brings a little bit of happiness in what has been a very difficult year, not just for basketball fans in LA, but just for people. So a fun and exciting and well-earned night for the Lakers, no question.
And for Laker fans and for Los Angeles, because this is a massive Laker town, and even casual fans get really excited by success at this level for the Lakers. And I think in particular this year, if you're in LA and you're like most people, you're stuck at home. Your kids are stuck at home because they can't go into school. Like, there's so much that you can't do this year as an Angelino. Yep. And there are worse places in the world to deal with this. We got a lot of parks. The weather's good, blah, blah, blah. But it's been shitty. It's hard. There is no way around it. This is something that feels really great. I am, by the way, fully partisan tonight. I am partisan in my Lakers shirt. I am celebrating with some Cincoro.
I have
the official tequila. I guess it's not the official tequila of the Lakers.
No, it is, however. Well, I don't know if it is or it isn't, but it is.
Yes, for people unaware,
he owns the damn thing.
Yes, that it is partly owned by Jeannie Buss, among other NBA owners. It is fantastic, and both of us, we will toast the Lakers on this night.
Cheers, Andy.
Virtual cheers.
You go this way. I'll go this way. Let's see if we can do this. Think.
Close enough.
Close enough. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about the game. There's a lot we want to get into tonight. Obviously, we want to remind you as well that this show, like all shows, brought to you by Delicious Pizza. 20% off when you use the password Cam Brothers. 2 locations, Hollywood and West Adams. I don't know. Text, DM Mike Ross. He's I'm sure feeling real saucy tonight. Real exciting. I don't know if you have to. Who knows? He might throw something extra in for you. I have no idea. That's not me saying, but I'm just saying the guy's in a good mood is all I'm saying.
Yes, he is. And they're open.
Some Delicious Pizza, 2 locations.
They are open right now.
Sent you. So this, after we talked about it Friday after the game, there was some concern, I guess, maybe just because you left the door open for Miami. Something could happen. Goran Dragic could come back, which he did tonight. Whatever it might be, the Lakers left no doubt in Game 6. They came out, they got out early, despite necessarily shooting particularly well. They were very good defensively, very early, and set a tone to the point where it just became clear that Miami was going to have a lot of trouble getting enough buckets to win this game.
The defense that they were playing in the first half of this game is some of the best defense. Forget that I've seen the Lakers play. It's some of the best defense I've seen any team play in quite some time. I mean, just the rotations were so crisp and aggressive and the relentless, really. I mean, the defensive energy that they had from the outset of this game was so relentless, it frankly overwhelmed Miami. Like, between the defensive relentlessness and the physicality that the Lakers played with, I mean, by the third quarter, they were ragdolling Miami. Like, and that says something.
What was it? How big did the lead get? It was 30
something
at one point.
Yeah. I mean, and they were also they were pushing that team around. And Miami, despite having a size disadvantage to the Lakers, they're not a soft team. Like, they're not a finesse team.
Oh God, no.
No, they're a team that, they will try to play with physicality and toughness themselves. And the Lakers just established this tone from the beginning of, it ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen tonight.
No. And, all the mistakes that they made in game 5, the way they let Miami stay in the game, the way the defense was, Pete Zayas, Laker film room did, exhaustive work over the weekend, laying out mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake that they made, and Miami repeatedly made them pay, to their credit. They didn't do that tonight. And, Miami, having left a lot on the floor in game 5 just to get to this point, I think Miami didn't quite have the juice. Jimmy Butler didn't have, the legs that he had the other night to kind of keep this up. They couldn't respond. And, it was very clear that they wanted and were going to make sure that there would be no game 7. Like, LeBron James, 28 points, 13 of 20, 14 rebounds, 10 assists, another triple-double for LeBron. He was named Finals MVP, which I think was exactly the right choice, and which we can talk about in a little bit if there's even really a lot of conversation to have about it. They were locked in a way that they weren't in game 5. They got performances that they didn't get in game 5, a much more efficient performance from KCP, a much more efficient performance from Rajon Rondo, who was great in the first half, finished with 19 points. I think he missed one shot in the first half, Andy. Danny Green hit 3 of 7 3-pointers, a couple of those coming early. Like they just, a lot of that stuff that didn't happen in game 5 happened in game 6, along with suffocating defense.
Yeah, they were just, I tweeted out during the game at Cam Brothers, LeBron wants to win a 4th championship almost as bad as he wants to get the F out of this bubble.
Damn right.
And you could just see that they were all, but it really, I think, began with LeBron, who in particular in transition offensively was just nonstop. He was just coming in waves at them, running every single time he had the opportunity. And this was, LeBron is traditionally pretty damn impossible to stop in transition, but this was a night where you could really see just this determination of, you will not slow me once I start running. No. You are not going to prevent me from getting to the basket. You are not going to prevent me from getting an and one, period. Because I know I've talked a lot during the course of the season. I've been concerned at times with LeBron around the rim. And there had been this period where he was missing some stuff point blank that he typically doesn't. But tonight, it was just clear the fuck out of my way. Just get out of my way. This is done.
There would be no game 7. There's no, in LeBron's record, we talked about it, a couple nights ago, LeBron's record in closeout games is incredibly impressive. I think they were all collectively disappointed with what happened in game 5. And, to me, what this does is it really puts a punctuation point on what this season was. The Lakers went through a Western Conference and essentially ran away with it. They ran away with the regular season in a Western Conference that was supposed to be very difficult. And granted, the Clippers, if they put the pedal down all season long, like the Lakers did in ways that we didn't expect. I think you would agree, Andy. I didn't think they would try as hard as they did to win every game as they did in the regular season.
No, it was actually you and I both thought that they would finish this season around the 4 seed, just specifically for that reason. We both thought they would get to it minimum
3, 4, whatever it is, because they didn't care. They didn't care about it.
Or just that it wouldn't be, at least it didn't feel necessary heading into the season. We both thought that they would reach at minimum the Western Conference Finals. Correct. So it's not like we thought that they weren't going to have a good season. We just thought, given the collective age of this team and the collective experience, that they would look to pace themselves in the way that we saw the Clippers do all season. And from minute one, this has been, it's been the most laser-focused Laker team that you and I have ever covered, other than maybe the 2009 team, the one that came back from just getting their asses handed to them in 2008 by the Celtics. The main difference being this group was just less intense to be around, but they were incredibly focused.
And so they run through the Western Conference and they give themselves this giant cushion to deal with, which turned out to be instead of something that they get to use down the stretch of a normal regular season, it becomes sort of not having to stress themselves during these bubble seeding games, whatever it is. And then they roll through, 16-5 in the playoffs. I don't care who they played. I don't care if you think those teams were overrated, underrated. You lose 5 games en route to a title. That is a dominating performance. And there are always going to be little pivot points where if they go the other way, something changes. If AD doesn't hit the 3-pointer, there are close games, but they did win those games. They did hit those shots, and they went 16-5. And what I think is fascinating about it is, in hindsight, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, playoff Rondo, Frank Vogel, good coach. All these, whatever it might be, this defense that really showed itself to be completely legitimate over the course of the regular season. It can look obvious in hindsight, but it wasn't. And I know Laker fans wanted to feel like their team was disrespected, but they weren't. And the amount of uncertainty that really was there legitimately, not as like the Lakers are going to make the playoffs kind of way, but they're one of a group of 3 or 4 or 5 teams with a real shot at it, but not necessarily like the overwhelming favorite. Like, that's what it really was as recently as when the playoffs started.
Well, also, too, you want to feel like they weren't disrespected in the sense that they had to work for it. Because if they have to work for it, that means it's better. Like, if you're saying that they were so disrespected, they were so much better than everybody else, then that having any type of doubt whatsoever that they wouldn't steamroll through this entire thing, then what you're saying is, in some ways, the accomplishment wasn't as impressive, because everybody else was so much further behind them. And beyond the fact that I don't actually think that's true, it's actually doing a disservice to the Lakers themselves. Like, I think it's actually doing a disservice to everything that they accomplished this season, and everything in particular they accomplished through the context of this season, beginning with the turbulence that happened in the preseason in China, where basically they had no real opportunity to accomplish much of anything, to Kobe's death, to the pandemic and the stoppage, and then going to the bubble, which was really difficult. I feel like you discount everything this team went through this year by getting your chest puffed up about the idea that you want people to think that they were so incredibly dominant. Why wouldn't this happen?
I go back and Jeannie Buss, and I do not blame her in the slightest for this, but it was, I think, the interview with Sam Amick of The Athletic, where she did a little bit of a victory lap and kind of a mic drop on this season. Like, we didn't do the press releases, and there is some, revisionism in there, and there's some, but like, you go back to where they were a year ago, or the off season. How long? I don't even know how long ago was the off season. Getting into this, I don't even.
You want to hear? Let me put this in perspective. And this came to mind when I saw Rachel Nichols interviewing LeBron after the game. And she mentioned that, LeBron, who is now with his 4th championship, 4th finals MVP, he's the only person in history to ever have 3 finals MVP with 3 different teams, that he's going to be 36 in a couple months. And it dawned on me.
You're right. Because it's right around Christmas, right?
Yes. His birthday's in December. I don't remember the exact day. But it dawned on me, Brian, that it was like, holy shit. This season, when it began, LeBron, kind of the offseason, when everything got started, LeBron was 34. He's almost 36 now. Like, that's how long this damn thing has been going.
I remember Bill Orm,
it's insane.
Bill Orm asked LeBron that question. It's like the 1-year anniversary of training camp starting was either at the end of the conference finals or the beginning of the finals. Like, that is insane. That is just an insane number. But like, you go back to where they were, and Frank Vogel was amazing this year. He deserves so much credit, and so much of what they were able to do inside the bubble is due to what Vogel did throughout the season. This, the chemistry that they developed, the trust that they developed, the ability to move Alex Caruso into the starting lineup and out of it, Markieff Morris in and out, start a different guy in the second half than the first half, sit JaVale McGee essentially for the entire finals, whatever it might be. All of that comes from the stuff that they built up over the course of the season, and Vogel deserves a tremendous amount of credit. He was still their 3rd choice, at least. There might have been lower, I don't know. But at least, sort of publicly, he was their 3rd choice. And it
I mean,
was
Jeannie, I don't mean to interrupt you, but Jeannie acknowledged in the interview that she did with Sam Amick, which, and I've also heard her talk about this with Howard Beck. Both of these are really good interviews that people should seek out.
absolutely.
But, she acknowledged we know they interviewed Ty Lue, but it's the first time I think I've ever heard it be acknowledged that they talked to Monty Williams. Like, these were both before they
Which
went
we
to
knew that
Vogel.
they did, but they never talked about it.
Right. So, I mean, like you said, by definition, Vogel was their third choice at highest.
Right. And that doesn't include maybe somebody else that they would have like, hey, what about this guy where you do the back channeling thing with the agent and whatever it might be. And then,
or if the optics hadn't been bad on Jason Kidd.
Sure. That wasn't done in the way that they wanted, like the some of the roster construction and I'm not going back and saying like they screwed up by waiting on Kawhi or anything like that, but they put some pieces together that some worked really well and some didn't work. I thought I said it then, I say it now, under the circumstances, I think they did a really good job. But the idea that people could look at the roster and say, they're going to have some issues potentially is not fiction. You go roll through the season, you get to the bubble when the playoffs are different than the regular season. And the way they played going into it with the shooting problems and the questions of the supporting cast and Anthony Davis not looking like a guy who was ready to become a potential finals MVP, which they needed him to be. I'm not saying I thought AD was going to suck, but you look at it and go, okay, he's been great in the playoffs before, but this is a different thing. Expectations are higher. Can he do what needs to be done? It wasn't preordained that the answer to that question would be yes on the kind of consistent, dominant basis that they needed to, because you saw they struggled when either of their stars wasn't really good, like really, really good. That to me is what makes this season so fascinating and so interesting, is that it isn't obvious. 2009 for the Lakers, for example, you brought up that team. That felt a lot more obvious. Like it was going to be hard for anybody to beat that team. I know
there was more of a template with that team too.
Right.
I mean, we knew that team was by definition a finals worthy team, a championship caliber team, because we had just seen them in the finals and they were running it all back healthier with Andrew Bynum healthy, right, with Trevor Ariza available. So, I mean, you knew that team
and angry
angry and really angry. And, guys like Kobe and Fisher and, Lamar and to a lesser degree, Powell, like they had played together longer. Like there was more to judge all of this on in the first place.
And who's to say that if, we never got the LeBron versus Kobe final that everybody expected, that everybody wanted, who knows what it's a different series, whatever it is, but they stomped Orlando. Like that was not a close series. Closer maybe than people remember in terms of game to game, but again, not a particularly close series. And so, like you said, there was a template for that, and there wasn't for this. And I think, obviously anybody who's saying that the Lakers didn't get respect is way off. They did. Anybody who's saying that the Lakers were, just trashed on it, they obviously were picked as a favorite, but they really exceeded, even with LeBron and AD, they really, I think, exceeded expectations in ways that, like, even if they'd won a title in a closer conference and, a 7-game series along the way and a 6-game series along the way, they still could have won a title and not performed this way, in ways that are so impressive en route to a title.
Well, I think it's also just because there were some holdovers from last year's team, but there were also enough guys that weren't there that you didn't know exactly how it was going to look, even if you had a pretty good idea that the potential was there. And both of us from the beginning believed that the potential to win a championship was obviously there. I mean, if your starting point is LeBron and Anthony Davis, particularly once it became clear from minute one that LeBron was dialed in and really invested in this season, then it's obvious. I mean, it's obvious that that's going to be the case, but you just don't know to that point. And, it's funny. You said before that, there was a little bit of luck involved. And for example, being able to get Danny Green, The only reason they were able to get Danny Green is because Danny was waiting for Kawhi to make his decision. And had Danny not been specifically connected to Kawhi, the Lakers wouldn't have been able to wait for Kawhi while still getting Danny. And then, there are happy accidents like Dwight only being on this roster because unfortunately DeMarcus Cousins ends up getting hurt.
Right.
But, and this is where, as the saying goes, you make your own luck. The Lakers were the only team in the league, not only that took a chance on Dwight Howard, but to the best of my knowledge, was even considering taking a chance on him.
Yeah, I don't know who they were competing with. It was funny because I wrote about it, and 6 years ago. I wrote about it, and I was like, when Dwight was out there, Boogie gets hurt, Dwight's out there. It's basically Dwight Howard, Joakim Noah, and like Mari Spates. Like these are the names, and it seems ludicrous in hindsight that you would even like, why was this a discussion? Of course you go sign Dwight. And whatever it is, but like what I think is so funny about it is like nobody wanted the guy because he was toxic, not because he was because he wasn't good. He was by far the most talented player available to do the job that the Lakers needed. But it wasn't just that he was the most unpopular player in the league among fans, and he probably was. He was probably the most unpopular player in the league among his peers too. And it seems silly in hindsight given how he played, but I was actually one of the only people who's like, I think from a basketball standpoint it'd be fine. And like it's last chance saloon, it's all these other things. There are 1,000 reasons why it should work, and only one why it wouldn't. And it was just because people were just pretty sure Dwight was going to Dwight it up, and he didn't. He said in training camp, I am going to have to show people and not tell people. And he showed all season long and never got weird about it. And congratulations to him. He's an NBA champion.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of guys on this team that you really feel happy for. Like you feel happy for Dwight because if nothing else, this stupid resurgent online debate about whether or not Dwight is a Hall of Famer, which is, it's stupid. But now, if there was any doubt, and there shouldn't have been because he was frankly, a first ballot Hall of Famer. But if there was any doubt, it's over now. Like his credentials in his prime plus a ring, he's done. I mean, he's in. But you're happy for KCP and all the shit that he took in the beginning of this season. Those first two games were brutal. And because both those games were at Staples Center, and the treatment that he was getting at Staples was ugly. And it got to him. I mean, he said that he did things like praying to help himself get through it. And, I'll be the first to admit, having covered KCP a couple of years, his swings could be maddening. But by definition, anybody who plays as hard as he does every second he's on the floor, he cares. He always cared. So seeing him end up having quite possibly the best season of his career, certainly the most, I think, consistent season that he's ever had that actually mattered. That you're happy for Alex Caruso. Like, you're happy for all these different, there are a lot of guys on this team who have reasons that you can be happy for them, for what this accomplishment means in terms of just their overall resume and their overall perception. And it's really cool because we've talked about a lot over the course of this season. This has been an enjoyable team to cover.
Yeah, very enjoyable. And like for all of I know people want to love hating the Lakers. I get it. I completely get it. This from the Nathan Mark. I'll finish this thought, but like I know people love hating the Lakers. It's hard to hate this team. It really is. I mean, Anthony Davis is a great story. LeBron playing the way he did at 35 is an amazing story. You talked about Dwight. People like redemption. KCP, Alex Caruso, like really Alex Caruso. And I mean, it just Frank Vogel's a great story. Genie is a great story. Like it is, and they didn't. There was no drama. They really did keep their heads down and just do the work all season long. This from the Nathan Mark for people who listen to our podcast. Andy and I would play a game called the statue game, where every Laker gets a statue, and we just decide where to put it. If you're really good, you're
the size of it.
The size of it. The better you are, the closer it is to Staples Center, the worse you are. It gets further away. It might be small. It might be if you're Roy Hibbert. My Roy Hibbert statue, for example, Andy, was on the ground where people could trip over it because Roy spent more time on the ground than any Lakers center in history.
Anthony Davis might want to have a word.
That's true, but not in the way that slow.
AD
Not in the
might
way
want
that
to have a
Slow Roy
word.
did. Not in the way that Slow Roy did. Nathan Mark, can't remember if you guys already have given Dwight's statue, but it'll have to be moved. And that's true. I don't remember what we did with Dwight. Do you? But whatever it was not nearly as flattering as it would need to be now.
No, I don't remember if we even gave Dwight a statue, but you are correct that if Dwight has a statue, there would be a remodeling necessary.
Yeah, it's got
a remodeling and a relocation.
A lot more shade in the Dwight Howard statue than should be there now.
Yes, if it existed.
If it existed. But this was a remarkably likable team, which is I think hard for non-Lakers fans to sort of accept. This was not a crew that you just go out and hate.
Although I think this year, I sensed that this year that even if you're not a Laker fan, and even typically you would root against this team, and I get it, like I totally get it. I dislike the Yankees for a lot of the same reasons that people dislike the Lakers. So I get it. I totally understand where it's coming from. But when you look at everything that this franchise has been through this year and the death of Kobe, which very obviously rocked the entire NBA landscape.
Yes.
I mean, everything connected to the NBA and really sports and frankly worldwide was rocked by Kobe's death. Like I hadn't seen anything like that for somebody that wasn't like a political figure, probably since Prince. Like where really you just saw this worldwide reaction of sadness and stunned and just people openly emotional about it. And the Lakers wearing their hearts on their sleeves the way they did in terms of openly wanting to win this championship, to pay tribute to Kobe, to pay tribute to Gianna Bryant, to make sure that their legacy was continued, this season, which, it's 10 years. It was funny, Brian. It hit me either yesterday or today. There's been a lot of talk about it being 10 years since Kobe won his last championship, the 2010 against Boston. But it hit me today that it's actually 20 years since Kobe won his first against Indiana. And that was actually a 6-game series as well. And, that's Kobe's first coming full circle to LeBron's first. Like if you're
Laker, AD's first overall, like there is a lot of that kind of open and closing kind of thing.
Yeah. And if I know that a lot of Laker fans have enjoyed, and I would even think maybe even found some comfort in that kind of synergy and symmetry. And if that's something that, you enjoy, I thought it was worth noting. But I think that's part of the reason why there's been a lot of goodwill towards this particular Laker team and this particular championship run that might not be there otherwise.
Yeah, but I think that has a lot to do with it. There's no question. But I also think it is the fact that there wasn't, the streetlights versus spotlights thing for as much as, the Clippers leaned into that. The Lakers were the streetlight team. Like, it seems silly to say, but like, I just look at this, and one of the things that I think is great about it is we got to really understand, like the Lakers have had all of the good players, like all of them. You go back in history and the amount of just incredibly talented people who have played for this franchise is staggering. The number of people who can't get their jersey retired for this franchise because they're not in the freaking Hall of Fame. Like that's the standard. You have to be a Hall of Famer to get your jersey retired, or they wouldn't have enough numbers left. LeBron James just finished the finals where he went 29.8 points, 11.8 rebounds, 8.5 assists. He shot almost 59% from the field and 39% from three. Get the fuck out with that.
It's probably very top loaded.
I don't care how old you are when you do that. Now, if you want to add the age thing in, it gets even better. Like he finished 1 assist and shy of a triple double in game 1, a rebound and assist shy of a triple double in game 2, 2 assists shy in game 3, 2 assists shy in game 4, 3 assists shy. It's hard to not go blue when you're saying assists that many times.
It's okay. We're independent now. You can do it.
Maybe I guess you should have passed more or something, but like, true. Like that, staggeringly good numbers. And then we got to watch it. Like we got to really understand and appreciate exactly what playoff LeBron is and how good that guy is. Yeah. I think it's spectacular.
Especially too,
even in the city that he has seen. Oh, froze on me for a second.
Yeah, I was going to say you're glitching out a bit.
You were glitching out on me.
I'll ask the people who was glitching. I'll ask.
But anyway, go on.
Yeah, I mean, just you saw over the course. You saw over the course of this. Damn. Yeah, it is you. I promise you, it's you. You saw just over the course of this series what happens when LeBron is truly locked into a game and truly locked into a series and just completely devoted to the idea. The kid from NYC says Brian going on a rant, then disappeared into the Matrix. That is kind of what happened, and he kept insisting that I was the one disappearing. Yeah. As B-Pax noted, it's an Anthony.
No, I'm just saying you were glitchy on my end.
It's an Anthony Irwin Wi-Fi status. You just go with your Ethernet, Brian. Don't ever go without the Ethernet. I think it's been established that for whatever reason, Andy. Well, then use a better Ethernet.
I am on the Ethernet.
You use the one made in America. Don't outsource your Ethernet cable. Use the real one. Use the one with American gumption.
Stealing Ethernet from Kazakhstan.
Good, whatever. Just steal it from somewhere. With someone asked if we can get a Wi-Fi sponsor. That wouldn't be the worst idea. Might kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
But you see what LeBron is capable of when he really recognizes this is a rare opportunity in front of me. This is an opportunity
I'm going to do something that I might disappear.
Right, that matters to me, and I'm going to make sure it happens. And there are very few people there are very few players in the NBA who have the type of ability to do that. I mean, what we saw from Jimmy Butler doing it twice over 6 games, the type of masterful control that Jimmy Butler had in those 2 Miami wins is unbelievable. I mean, Jimmy played well enough that I think you could have at least made an argument for him as most valuable player in the most literal sense, even on the losing side of this. You know, I'm not saying it's what should have happened. I'm just saying you could have actually made the argument.
The argument.
But the control that LeBron has over games is unlike just about any player I've ever seen. Because even somebody like, say, Chris Paul or Steve Nash, who were masterful with their control over the game, they don't have the type of size that LeBron has. Like they don't have the ability to impose whatever the hell they want over the course of a game the way LeBron does. I mean, like LeBron does this in ways that we probably have not seen since Magic. But there are certain things athletically even that LeBron does that Magic doesn't. You know, Magic was not an above the rim type of player. You know, LeBron is. You know, it's unbelievable. Think I fixed it. Brian says, so far, I'm not sure. I don't actually know. Speak.
Well, no, now it's reloading. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Having trouble
Brian, the Nathan Mark says Brian looks like he's using a camera from the last Laker title run too. Does look that way.
I brought mine from Minnesota. Thank you.
And it's just, I mean, obviously the debates over LeBron's legacy and all that stuff, I mean, it's just going to continue. And some of that's just the culture that we live in, the sports media culture that we live in there. It's 24/7. There are so many damn hours to fill. And talking about LeBron, similar to how in LA, talking about Kobe will always get people to watch and to listen. And people who've listened to our podcast long enough know that neither one of us really gives a shit about the whole GOAT conversation. Like, as long as you're not picking somebody who just is a stupid idea, I don't care. Like, I'm more interested in talking about why people are great than trying to figure out who was actually better than. I mean, it's in a lot of ways, it's an exercise in splitting hairs. But LeBron's career to this point, whether you think Jordan is better, whether you're somebody who thinks Kareem is better, whatever, LeBron may end up having, when it's all said and done, the most unique career in NBA history, like the most singular, and maybe in all sports. And by the way, that's something that I used to say about Kobe all the time, that the uniqueness of Kobe's career is something that went, I think, very underappreciated. In part because everybody was
everybody's always trying to compare him to Jordan.
Right. Everybody was so busy trying to figure out why he wasn't Jordan that you actually were missing a lot of what was in front of you. And my favorite piece that I ever wrote about Kobe was after the 2010 championship. I'll see if I can find it and I'll put it in the chat room. But just about how we were spending so much time dissecting Kobe's career that it felt like the royal we were actually missing it.
Yeah.
And I think there's a danger of that happening. As much as everybody appreciates LeBron, if you get caught up in the stuff that doesn't matter, you could end up missing the things that actually do.
In what I think is so stupid about all these things is like, and I think the point you're making is a really important one, because like, let's pretend that like Jordan is so far ahead in the conversation. I don't think he is, but fine, whatever. So Jordan's not Jordan. When was the last time Jordan played a game? Like, when did he retire?
2004, 2003,
like whatever it is. So you're talking, 16 years, 17 years. So because you're very concerned about Michael Jordan or whatever it is, and LeBron James is we'll just call him the second best player that's ever played. Or the third, if you think Kareem is number 2, whatever it is. Kareem hasn't played in 25 years, 30 years. Like, you're going to miss and not appreciate this because you're only watching the second best player that ever played, like ever. Like, why on earth nobody would say, I'm not going to appreciate, I'm trying to think of a quarterback.
I was going to say
Joe Montana might be better, whatever it might be. Like, why would you do that as a sports fan? Why? And it's our fault. And I don't mean literally our fault. I mean,
we've actually been fighting against this. Like, it's literally not our fault. You and my fault, Brian. There's a lot of stuff that we've done over the years that I look back and go, I'd do that differently.
Right. But it's also because fans tolerate it. It's like, we sort of all bought into this sort of collective hot take sports culture. And the downside of it, it can be fun. Like, I'm not saying you can't have the bar arguments and all that kind of stuff. That's not the point. But it's like, at some point you have to stop and be like, wow, this guy, like, I'm just going to enjoy this guy and what he is. And like, okay, if he's second, third, fourth, I don't care. Like, how many people played basketball in the NBA since it started? Like, more than 4. Let's not get bogged down here. Focus people. But I'm excited. I'm excited too and I think a couple of people asked LeBron this after the game. Like, you kind of looked at AD winning his first title. Did that kind of bring that back to you? And then what can that do for you as a player? And LeBron said, yeah, it did kind of remind me of what it was to win my first one, and talked about the confidence that it gives you as a player to go win. And like, Anthony Davis is an NBA champion and used this finals to vault himself right and truly into the very tiny sliver of the most elite players in the NBA. And there's no reason to think that he still can't get better. So if LeBron descends apparently very, very slowly from his spot as still arguably the best player in the game, and you have an ascending Anthony Davis, there is no reason that Davis can't go and win another couple, 2 or 3 or something, whatever it is, as a Laker. He's still plenty young enough to do it. The Lakers obviously are going to give him all the support they possibly can. And he's got LeBron James for at least 2 more years. Like, this is a team that isn't going anywhere.
What I think is really interesting is that Anthony Davis actually is heading into this season, this upcoming one, where there's going to be talk about him potentially being the best player in the league. And there's going to be talk about him as an MVP candidate because, I mean, as we know, a lot of this gets started through narratives. And that's a narrative that I guarantee will be there for Anthony Davis between him having a title, between how well he played this season, and then especially in the postseason. And also, too, if LeBron needs to, and it, I guess, remains to be seen if he does, but if he does, we've seen that he can dial it back some in order to pace himself for the upcoming playoffs. And not only, I think, is AD capable of something like, being the focal point of the team, being, the guy that you look at and say, okay, he's unquestionably the engine. I actually think it would be good for him. I think it would be great for his development. And it's not like LeBron's going to become just some guy along from the ride. He's still going to be really critical to how it all operates.
And always, I think, functionally, and sort of certainly a leadership role. There's still some stuff for AD to learn in that regard. He's not a vocal guy and all that, but he's
gotten more so.
Yep, absolutely.
But like you said, he's not all the way there.
I mean, and I look at next year, and it's easy to forget. First and foremost, the Clippers, in theory, come back a little bit better, different, I think, but at least certainly as an organization, hyper motivated, because if that goes really south again tomorrow, that franchise could be fucked. Yes, it could be. And I'm not. I realize, I know who we're talking to tonight. I am not an anti-Clippers guy. I think I want that team to be. It's fun for the city, for the Clippers to be good. It is better for the city, for the Clippers to be good and have this great rivalry between the Lakers and Clippers and get 2 or 3 or 4 Western Conference finals between that. Like, how awesome would that be? Like, I want that because I love basketball and I love basketball in this city. The Clippers are going to be good again next year. Let's just assume so. Oh, by the way, Golden State's coming back healthy with either other players or a very high draft pick and all this. Like, they're not necessarily going anywhere. They ought to be really good next year. Utah is ascending, I think. They played this playoffs without Bojan Bogdanovic, which was a big deal. So they get him back with Donovan Mitchell doing what he did. Denver should get a little bit better. I mean, the only team that you look at in the Western Conference and say that team is stuck and probably goes backwards is Houston. But Dallas is going to get better. New Orleans is going to get better.
Phoenix,
if that was real, what they did in the bubble is going to get better.
Memphis will get better.
Yeah. I mean, all of these teams are going to be better. I'm not saying they're going to be better than the Lakers, but the flip side of that is, Andy, the Lakers, there is a gap, a legit gap between the Lakers and the rest of the conference right now. It could get filled reasonably quick. But with some smart decisions over the summer and, an adjustment here and there and whatever, and a healthy LeBron again, and an Anthony Davis, who might even be a little bit better, I don't see why that gap goes away.
No, and especially too, because I imagine, there could be some moves here and there around the margins, but if I had to guess, this team will come back largely intact, if for no other reason than they don't have a ton of flexibility. Right. But that means they have continuity, and they're also a group that now understands what it really means to win a championship. So even if, say, with LeBron at 36, and we don't know when exactly this next season is going to start, but there's a chance that he won't
after Christmas.
Right, but there's a chance that he's not going to get as much typical off-season rest as he otherwise would, much less an off-season, like remember last year where they didn't make the playoffs. I could picture a scenario where it's dialed back for LeBron a little bit more, just because contextually it would be more necessary without it hurting the team, without it actually hurting these guys.
The flip side is, and I think, we're looking at the Dodgers starting the NLDS or the NLCS tomorrow. Look what this sort of I think at this point in his career, if Clayton Kershaw every season for him were 60 games, great. Like that I think, I think there is a chance at least that next season is not 82 games, because the NBA, I mean, I haven't followed this super closely and there's so much to consider and so much is dependent on what the world looks like in January, because the NBA wants fans back in stadiums and they want fans back in arenas and all that. And I don't know, I don't know if we're going to be there or not. they may not have to play 82. And so if you play 65,
Yeah, maybe that's true.
That helps too. And now LeBron, you can kind of guide him through whatever it might be. So there could be some of that next year as well, because the NBA does not want to be doing this again where they're competing with the NFL and the Major League Baseball playoffs. Hockey would be back, in theory where it's supposed to be, but like there's too much going on. They don't want that. It's not good for ratings. It's not good for anyone. And
college football too.
It's just the NBA Finals is not a fall thing. It's just people have habits, and it needs to move back, and they understand that. I think next year could actually, a shorter season probably favors the Lakers, right? Because in theory, it favors LeBron. Adam Silver, this from Mr. Cabrera and NHS, a full season starting in January. I know. I thank you for that update. I think I obviously I think that's what they would love. I don't know if that's what they're going to get.
I mean, look, there's so
I don't
much.
know how you play 82 games with the same without cramming a lot of 80 stuff in and still finish when you want to finish.
Look, there's so much about this that they can't even truly know until we know where we are with the coronavirus. Right. I mean, there's a lot in there that forget the idea of making sure that everybody gets enough of a season that they can recuperate and avoid injuries. So, so it's not unfair to the Lakers and the Heat and, even teams that got to the Western Conference Finals or Eastern Conference Finals. Just there's a lot of this that's outside their control.
Absolutely.
But I hadn't thought about it that way. If there is a somewhat shortened season, that could potentially help out with LeBron.
If you play 82 games and you don't have to stop for how long was that layoff? Like 3 months, basically? Forget. Like we were just doing late night happy hours the whole time. I forget exactly how long the actual layoff was. If you don't have to stop again, obviously you start a month and a half after you normally would, and the season ends, I don't know, in July, I guess that is, like late July in August, and then you kind of recycle it and you just keep shaving that back down until you're ending in June. But like a lot of that looks forward. But I agree with you. I think you can package Danny Green and Kyle Kuzma into a trade, and that's probably the only impactful chip that you have to do a lot of stuff. And we'll get it way deeper into like what they do next year. But I agree with you. They're basically going to be rolling it back. But honestly, the most important thing about rolling it back is, are you bringing back LeBron and Anthony Davis and I guess Alex Caruso?
Well, assuming AD resigns. We don't know.
We don't know. That's true.
We don't know that AD is coming back. He could pull a Kawhi. We have no idea. Like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. There is no guarantee that Anthony Davis is coming back. I feel very confident that Anthony Davis is coming back, just for the record.
Well, look, maybe he does a Kawhi. He just won.
He did just win.
Now he can go. Now he can go.
Oh, my God. To Chicago. He wins a championship and goes back home. Guys, it's not going to happen. It's not going to actually happen.
We shouldn't have done that.
No, that's actually no. I would, all kidding aside, I would find that jaw-droppingly stunning. Like Kawhi going to the Clippers after winning a championship, I legit thought that Toronto had a chance to keep him, but contextually, it's not the same thing. AD leaving this team to go to the Bulls would be literally, you will have to pick up my jaw off the ground.
Only marginally less crazy than him leaving to join like the Marlins. It's like
I thought you were going to say the Marines.
No,
like it would be that crazy.
But like, you know what? I'm going to go be a member of the Miami Marlins. Like that would not be. It would be closer. I think that the odds are higher of that happening than they are of him joining the Bulls or Lee. Like that's where we are. I'm trying to think of like if there's anything we didn't cover in this.
Really quick. I mean, we didn't touch on it a lot, but I just thought Frank Vogel tonight made the decision to start Alex Caruso, essentially head of Dwight Howard, and move Anthony Davis to center. And it's yet another move that Frank Vogel has made over the course of these playoffs when it comes to the lineup or the rotation that worked extremely well. And it also, too, we've talked about this before, but the move that Frank Vogel made in Game 2, when he decided to start Anthony Davis at center, and interestingly enough, playing Alex Caruso to that point, I don't think it even played in that game. It ended up working. And that moment, I think, was so important for this team in terms of establishing this tone where Frank Vogel was obviously going to be very, deferential to LeBron and Anthony Davis in ways that coaches should be deferential to their superstars, because that's the point of having superstars and that's how you make this stuff work. But that also he was not going to coach from a position of fear. And I think between that and the preparedness and the meticulousness that these guys saw from the beginning, I actually asked LeBron about that. I want to say after they closed Denver, about just what gravitated him towards Frank Vogel so quickly. And those are among the things that he mentioned. And, he recognized that competing against Frank Vogel. But the way he coached this team forget the idea of instilling culture, from a tactical standpoint, he was really good. And and both of us thought that the process of hiring Frank Vogel was a shit show, but there was nothing wrong with him as a hire. That being said, he's a better coach than I realized. He's a really, really good coach.
He's excellent. And like I said, we did a tiny bit, but like all of these things, you sliding guys in and out, obviously it makes a difference that when you have LeBron and AD and everyone else is sort of in one way or another kind of an interchangeable part, and they get that. But they're still professional athletes and there's still an ego, and you have to create that atmosphere where guys can move in and out of the lineup in that way. And not only do they not complain about it, and it's game 6 of the NBA effing finals. Like Dwight's going to march off the court and create a stink. Like, no, it's not going to happen. But to know, like, the defensive cohesion, all of these, like, to be able to slide these guys in and out in ways that aren't going to be problematic is a testament to the coaching. Because is it easier to win a title when you have Anthony Davis and LeBron James? Absolutely it is. But no coach wins without great talent. Managing that talent in a city like LA, especially when you come in the way that he came in, where everybody knows you're not the first choice, where you have buy-in from LeBron because this season is about LeBron. But if it looks like it's going off the rails, you might lose that quickly because LeBron doesn't have time for you to figure it out or whatever, or for things to go south. Like, to come in under those circumstances and basically just say, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to go down. If I'm going to go down, I'm going to do it my way with, instill my system and my values and my whatever. And I believe it will work. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. I am pleased for him that people did stop in these playoffs and go, you know what, that guy really deserves a lot of credit. And I think that's one of the better, again, it's one of the better stories of the playoffs.
Last question I know I wanted to bring up before we go, just because we've talked about it before. So I was curious to get your opinion on it. Now with a second ring, I should say. What do you think this does with the question of Rajon Rondo as a Hall of Famer?
Still not in.
I don't know.
He's marginal. I think, I think you get one more of these sort of playoff Rondo mythical sort of performances, then I think you can have a different discussion. But I think it's not quite there yet.
I think if it was a coin flip before, it's more of a weighted coin flip in his favor.
Was it a coin flip though?
I think it was around 40-ish%. I could be. Let me go look at basketball reference right now.
Yeah, go look up a basketball reference and see. I don't know. I think it's close.
They've got him right now as 40.7, and that's obviously before this championship.
The other way, and that's before this. That's the thing. It's like the mythology of this. Like the Lakers, like this was. I didn't mention this when we were talking about the shit that isn't preordained. Like any Laker fan who says they knew Rajon Rondo was going to morph into this guy when the playoff, you are a liar.
Oh, you know how we know you're a liar? Because we heard from you all. We heard from all of you.
All of you.
Every single one of you.
I hope, you hope for it, but I didn't. The Lakers essentially traded for a guy who was one of the most destructive players on any team last year. Like there were very few people you could put on an NBA floor that had a worse effect, a more negative effect on his team than Rondo last season. This season, Rondo, when he played in the regular season, he wasn't technically a minus. Last year was a minus 8.6 in his net rating, Andy. That is really hard to do. This year, he wasn't a minus, but he had the lowest, pretty much by far, the lowest net rating of any player that had any kind of significant role in the rotation. So on a team as dominant as the Lakers, and a team where, the sort of collective net rating was so good, for Rondo to be at the bottom was meaningful. And, he played that game one where you're like, oh, crap. Like, Lakers fans were plotting to sneak into the bubble to remove him. Like, it was going to be like a SEAL operation. They were going to go in there and snatch him out or drag him across the quarantine line or whatever it was going to be. And then he comes back in game two, of the Houston series. You're like, oh, okay. And then game three, you're like, whoa, the Lakers acquired a different player when he came back. Like they got a new guy. It was like they made a trade for a really, really good player. And so that wasn't preordained, but another one of these playoff runs, maybe that could be the thing.
Well, I will say this though. I'm not going to pretend that it felt preordained to me either. I mean, I thought it's interesting. I thought that in some ways Rondo's absence could be a blessing in disguise when he got hurt at the beginning of the bubble, just because we've seen over this year that, they were demonstratively worse on both sides of the ball when he played. But then you'll remember that as the restart was going and the Lakers were really struggling, especially offensively, I actually thought they were missing Rondo.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
And what you saw was, as much as the offense suffered this year when LeBron went off the court and Rondo was running it, and, LeBron typically not there. That's the difference between LeBron and Rondo. LeBron being, the best playmaker in the NBA this season. But the difference between LeBron and everybody else made you recognize, all right, Rondo may not be perfect, but they miss what he's doing. And then he just cranked it up. I mean,
but the difference is they missed what he's doing. They always missed what he's doing in theory, but they didn't miss it in practice. And now, you could see why he was so important and why, it wasn't just playoff Rondo cliche. It was like playoff Rondo actually doing the things that you needed to be a winning product. And when he didn't play well, and, he's sort of all over the place, I thought, in game 5, but, a couple of the games where he didn't play well, you noticed like the team lost something significant when he didn't play well. So yeah, Andy,
awesome.
I don't know if you have anything left in your glass.
I don't. I do not. But I'm happy, man. I'm really, really happy.
I know you see like people. I mean, I think people who follow us by now know. Like I've grown to appreciate the organization. I know people in it. Like I'm a fan of the city. I like the team. I like the players. Whatever. Andy is a real legit. Like he was a Laker fan before we did this for a living kind of thing.
Oh, way before.
This is like a big deal.
Yeah. Oh God, I'm super excited. I mean, it's awesome. It's fun that I've not felt for a long time as a Laker fan, or I mean, long time by Laker years, but
right,
by normal fan base standards, it's
go Minnesota Timberwolves.
Cool. Yeah, by normal fan base standards, it's exactly. But it's fun, and like I said, particularly in a year like this, and knowing what it meant to this organization, again, to do it this particular year, I'm stoked, man. It's fun. I've sent out some texts to some friends of mine. Like, it's fun.
It's a legitimately great story, period. And it's a particularly great story for the Lakers. And I think about this, Andy. The Lakers could win one. The Dodgers could win one. And who knows? Maybe LAFC kind of turns their season around, and they
Rams have been good.
The Rams look really good. Like,
just like you said,
what would it mean for 2020 to be this completely weird year where everything goes wrong except all the LA teams win?
What?
It's not out of the question. I mean, it's still obviously pretty early for the Rams, but the Dodgers have a great opportunity in front of them. They look fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, how crazy would that be?
You know what? It would actually, given 2020 has obviously been a year of a lot of tragedy, a lot of sadness, a lot of truly historically awful things happening. But it's also been weird. I mean, it's been epically weird. And it would be, a continuation of that epic weirdness if, as an Angelino, you remember 2020 as one of the worst years in American and global history, but also the year
in sports, LA sports history.
Yeah, the year where your team just racked up all the rings.
Oh my God. All right. Well, it's something to look forward to. We will be back with more podcasts. We got some news coming up on the podcast, which we will reveal at the moment. It is appropriate, but it's good news. We think, and good news we hope. Late night happy hour this week. You've been looking at the crawl go by, but Zach Schwartz from the Dunk Bait podcast, the third guy. We have not had the third guy on, and now
I know it's cool.
Sam Esfandiari. Talk some basketball and some NFL with him. Great voice from up north in California. Lindsay Theory is going to join us later in the week, and Friday Gustavo Arellano. We're going to eat some tortillas and talk about voting. It's going to be a really fun show. Reminder, delicious pizza, 20% off. Use password Cam Brothers, 2 locations, West Adams and in Hollywood. Go celebrate with Michael Ross. The man wants to see you, Laker fans. And so we'll be back tomorrow night, the late night happy hour with Zach Schwartz from the Dunk Bait podcast as our guest. Hope to see you guys this week. Thanks so much for supporting that show and for this one as well. And
congratulations to all y'all.
That's
congratulations to all of you.
Very fun night for LA. So we're happy for you, happy for the team. See everybody tomorrow.